event recorded, and this is just a reminder to you all too, if you're interested in receiving that recording after the event, just make sure that you registered on Handshake, and all that have registered on Handshake will receive the recording after the event. Just kind of what to expect about this event. We have our different panelists here. So we have Camryn, Autumn, and Joshua. So thank you all for joining us. We'll get into that panel in just a second, but first we wanted to, I'll be going over kind of all the different Career Center resources we have. We'll get into the formal panel, which will be moderated by Saba. And then we will leave it up to Q&A for all of you. So if you have any specific questions for any of the panelists, feel free to either drop that in the chat to everyone. You can privately message myself, Saba, or Jocelyn, and we can ask. Otherwise, feel free to verbally unmute as well. So we will get into just briefly introducing the Career Center and all the wonderful resources we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So this is our Career Center website, and this is kind of the landing page. The first thing I wanted to highlight is career advising. So I had mentioned that myself, I'm a career advisor, and then Saba also is our student ambassador who does advising appointments. So we hold 30-minute advising appointments really on any topic that you are looking to have a conversation regarding your career around. So if we click on the career advising page, we also organize the Career Center in something we like to call career communities. So we have 5 different career communities, basically just kind of organized within different majors, different interests you may have, and we really want you to explore all your opportunities while you're still in school. So we always say that your major doesn't always have to equal that end career. And so as I had mentioned, am the advisor for healthcare and science. We have an ambassador, Saba, as well. And each of the other career communities have an advisor and ambassador too. So you can meet with as many advisors or ambassadors within these career communities that you are interested in. Each of our career communities have different landing pages with a ton of different resources. I won't go into too much in depth, but definitely encourage you to kind of explore our website for a ton of different resources. We also have on our website our career library. So it's a ton of different handouts. I want to say we have over 50 different handouts on here. We have career videos, blog posts, and you can kind of see we have a handout pretty much for any career related topic that you could have maybe a potential question about. So definitely encourage you to look and check out our career library. We actually have a full section on like internships and experiences. So that might be a specific area to look into. That's a little bit on our website. If you're interested kind of along those career communities, and I'll put this in our chat too, but we have an opt-in to join a career community. And essentially what this is, we send out monthly newsletters with upcoming job and internship postings, upcoming events, just different trends within the industry. So if you're interested in receiving those monthly newsletters for maybe one career community or all of them, definitely encourage you to opt into this career community. And it's just filling out a simple little form here. The next thing I wanted to quickly highlight is Handshake. So this is the platform we use for a lot of different things in the Career Center. One, it has a full job and internship board. So if you just click jobs, you're taken to all of the postings that are currently available. And then if you're interested in meeting with a career advisor or ambassador, you can schedule an appointment via Handshake. So if you just click the Career Center tab up here, and then you click on appointments, you're taken through several different prompts kind of on your background and who you're looking to meet with, as well as it'll show you all of our availability so you can find a time that works best for you. Second to last thing, we have a LinkedIn group for our career community. So again, this is more just like an informal way to share opportunities that we get from employers, as well as just upcoming events that we have. It's just probably the most updated way to keep in communication. And it's also a way to connect with your fellow peers too, because there's a lot of students, alumni, I believe some faculty in here too. So I will drop the link to both our LinkedIn group and join a career community link in a second here. And then lastly, we have our winter career fair coming up on February 23rd, and it's located on campus in Lincoln Park, and it's from 3 to 6 p.m. Definitely would encourage, especially if you're interested in kind of finding an internship opportunity, or even if you're looking for a job post-grad. There's a ton of different employers, and you can see all the different employers that are signed up. This is a great networking opportunity, even if you stop by for a couple minutes and talk to a couple employers. It's a very valuable experience to have. So I will stop here and we will get into the panel. So I will turn it over to Saba to start the panel.
Thank you. And before we get started, can each of the panelists introduce themselves and share their name, major, what year in school they are in, and any involvement that they have at DePaul, and their internship title and organization?
I can go first. Hi, my name is Autumn. I'm a senior, majoring in economics and international studies, and I also have a minor in Spanish. In terms of my involvement on campus, it's mostly been through on-campus jobs. So I used to work in the Career Center as a peer mentor, and I also had an on-campus internship in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. But the internship that I'll be talking about today was my summer internship, where I was a higher education consulting intern at Huron Consulting Group, specifically in their higher education research department. So basically, the company that I worked for would get hired by colleges, universities, cancer centers, research centers to fix whatever problems that they had related to their research institutions.
My name is Camryn. I'm a senior at DePaul. And then I'm a double major, communications and psychology. The things I do on campus other than internship stuff is I'm in Delta Gamma, and then I'm in some of the other like honor societies, so Psi Chi and like Lambda Chi and stuff like that. And then my internships, in the past, I was a research and referral intern at Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains, which is Colorado, New Mexico, and Nevada. And then I'm currently an intern at Center Focused Therapy, and my title is just like a project intern.
I am Josh. I'm a junior, double majoring in physics and math. My current involvement is I am an undergraduate researcher in the physics department. But before that, the internship I'll be talking about mainly today is my involvement, is my internship at the Adler Planetarium, where I was a Far Horizons undergraduate intern is what the title is, but really I was just a research intern where I helped design software that allowed us to analyze light pollution of urban cities.
Thank you. And to get started, what was your initial search process for finding internships like, and what advice would you give on where to look for opportunities?
So I found my internship on Handshake, and I also just in general had the most success applying through jobs and internships on Handshake. And so that would be kind of the main place that I would look, especially since they're looking for like specifically interns from your institution.
I found my internship during COVID. I lived in Colorado for a couple months, and I drove by the Planned Parenthood Center, and I just like kept thinking I could see myself working there if I lived there, and it would be like so great. So they didn't have any positions hiring, but I just reached out, and I think that that's a really good way to find internships. If you like pass by an office or you see the branding for a company that you really like and would want to work for one day, it doesn't hurt to reach out. The worst thing that happens is you get a connection from that. Best, you get an internship or eventually work there. And then regarding my internship at Center Focused Therapy, I found that just through the recommendation emails from different staff at DePaul. So since I'm in the College of Communications and as well as the one through psychology, I get both of the emails and I always just check it out. So for this one I applied and then I luckily got it as well.
Yeah, to kind of add on to what Camryn just said, I found all of my internships through professors here in my department, in the physics department. And I think that's kind of an overlooked way of getting internships, primarily because many of the faculty at DePaul, depending on the specific college you're in, are either people who have been in industry or are still involved in industry somehow. So whether you're looking for research positions or industry positions, professors are a great way to get your foot through the door in terms of finding those opportunities. And in addition to building that connection with your professors in your department, a lot of the times you'll need letters of recommendation. And as you're building those connections, you'll have people that you can go to for those letters of recommendation, i.e. the professors you're connecting with. So I found all of mine through professors I've had and have gone to office hours to build a working relationship with, and through word of mouth through the department. So I think that looking at your professors is a great way to sort of get started in looking for internships.
Thank you. And then when searching for internships, did you look for opportunities that were relevant to your major or your interests, or did you have a specific job or role in mind?
For me, I was applying to a really wide range of internships since I kind of have like a broader major and I have a broad array of interests. And so I was kind of applying everywhere, also just kind of to get more interview experience also and see how different types of industries interviewed differently. But the main reason why I got my internship, or at least I knew to look for it, was because like working for on-campus jobs in higher ed kind of gave me an interest in working for higher ed in a different way. And so that's when someone verbally told me about higher ed consulting. And then I started looking for more types of consulting roles.
I think there's definitely a level of importance to ensuring that any experience you're getting is resume applicable for things you could see yourself doing in the future. But I also highly recommend getting as many experiences and internships as you can. I wish I got more. I had two, and being able to really put yourself into a position that would portray a postgraduate life is really valuable. And I wish I could have done it in more directions. So I would just do as many as you can, and remaining resume applicable is important too.
Yeah, I think that applying to internships based on your interests is important. Of course, you want to be interested in what you're working in. But I also, in my experience and in the experience of having friends who have had internships, when you go to your internship, you find out that you're told to do things that you might not actually know how to do. So it's all a learning process. So when you get to your internship, you're gonna see that it's the case where you need to do things that you might not have thought you're gonna have to do when you were applying, right? For example, at the Adler, I thought I was gonna be mainly working with stuff like physics and math because that's my major and that's what we were talking about in the interview. And then when I go, I'm coding at least, half the day. So while it is great and a good idea to pursue internships that appeal to your interests, I would also let the door open because you never know where your skills are applicable. And honestly, when you go through your internship, your interests will change dramatically, right? Because you'll be exposed to things that you've never done before. So while, yeah, it's a good idea to keep those interests aligned with what you're applying to, I wouldn't close the door off to something that may seem a bit off the track for you or something you may not have done.
Thank you. And there's a question in the chat. Did you have an easier time finding unpaid internships?
For me, yes. I think that's like across the board. Um, but I had two unpaid internships before I got the paid one that I'm talking about today. Um, and both of them, those were more just like passion projects in my personal experience. I worked for like a nonprofit that helped survivors of sexual assault and human trafficking. And then I also had another internship that was like grant writing. And I also had one of them compensated for through the Internship Plus program through the Career Center. So that's a really good resource if you have an unpaid internship. But I do think that having those unpaid ones on my resume helped me eventually land a paid one. And it also really taught me some of the things that I valued in an internship in a workplace. Because a lot of times, like in one of my experiences, I really disliked the unpaid internship that I was doing, and I didn't like the type of work that it was. And that gave me like a really good knowledge of the types of jobs that I don't want to apply to.
Yeah, so for a majority of nonprofit related internships, you're probably not going to get paid. And I think when it is like a passion project, like Autumn said, I think it's worth it, especially to get experience and kind of do things you may already be doing for volunteer or stuff like that. And then my current internship, it's a 3-month unpaid, and then after that, you reassess to see if you can get compensated for your future work. At first, I had a really big feeling towards not getting paid for work. Like I was really against unpaid internships other than nonprofit ones, but I think the experience pays for itself, honestly. And I wouldn't stray away from an internship just because it's not paid, because you're still a student and getting compensated. While it would be nice in all circumstances, sometimes companies just don't do that yet. Hopefully one day it will become like a normalized thing where everybody gets paid, but the information is super valuable just for helping you figure out what you're going to do and what you're putting into undergrad. So yeah.
Yeah, fortunately, I've a lot of the research positions or research internships are usually paid, at least in the ones I've come across. But if I were to, if someone were to ask me if I wanted to do what I did in the past in an unpaid position, I would of course say yeah. Primarily because one, DePaul has ways to fund you during unpaid internships, which is a great thing, and is probably unknown to a lot of the student body. But two, I'm doing a lot of these internships so that I can be better prepared, one, for grad school, and two, just to expose myself to industry roles and to use what I'm learning in class. So yeah, I value that a bit more than I do. Paycheck is always nice, of course, but yeah, getting that experience is also great.
Yeah, and another question in the chat, what aspects of your resume do you think helped you get your foot in the door?
For me, I think that my resume showed my interest level in the type of internship that I wanted. And I think that that gave me a really big leg up from other people who might just like stumble into a certain type of internship. My resume was really crafted towards like showing that I have a passion for higher ed and showing that I have like the education level along with my interests to be a good candidate for the role. So if you really want a specific type of internship, I'd highly recommend looking at your resume right before it and making sure that you have, you know, aspects of your resume that align really well with the job description. Just putting in that extra effort, I think, will really help you get the foot in the door.
For me, I would say a lot of my previous volunteer work helped, even with just like interview conversations that helped like as guidelines for things I've experienced. So I think that, and just having like a really good setup of what your resume says and how you're going to present it in an interview. LinkedIn has a really cool thing where you can like PDF download everything on your LinkedIn, and then not only is it like super organized with everything you've done, but it also has like all the logos of all the places you've worked. So it's really aesthetically looking. So I think that helped. And then just making sure like if something on your resume, make sure you bring it up in the interview as well, so it all translates and you kind of like check off all of your required or applicable experiences.
Right, yeah. I would agree that like relevant positions is very important on a good resume. And I like to say that the best part about my resume are the things that I didn't do, but rather the things that were changed by other people looking at my resume. So the best thing I ever did for my resume was to give it to someone who knew a lot more, who's had more experience in applying to positions. So I remember when I was applying for the Adler, for example, I showed my resume to a couple of professors in the department. You know, they've probably put together dozens, if not more than dozens of resumes in their time to similar positions as the one I was applying to. So I think a combination of relevant positions and organization, something that's, you know, pleasing to look at, and review is the key to a good resume. I don't think you can ever review it enough, right, before you apply.
Thank you. And how did you go about cold approaching a company for an internship? Do you have any tips or advice for that?
I can't personally speak to this experience.
When I have reached out to companies that aren't necessarily hiring to see if they have any room for an internship, I've even said things like if I could come and shadow for a day. I always just go to their email, and then at the bottom is like the careers, and then you see if they have anything. If they don't, they always have like a contact me. It's either like a submission on the website or just an email itself. And I kind of have like a drafted one where I like fill in the blank per company, per how it relates. But I mean, whatever you put in there, however it applies to you, I think just like getting your name out there is just the whole purpose of it. And then hopefully they call back. I leave my link to my LinkedIn, not my phone number really, but yeah, a link to my LinkedIn, and then they already have my email from sending it. So I do that and hope to hear back. A lot of the times I don't hear anything. Sometimes I hear like, oh, subscribe to our LinkedIn page and you'll find out if we get an opening. But yeah, sometimes they do say something, and there's nothing really to lose. So yeah.
I found that alumni are the most helpful in this position. So I remember during my freshman year, I was really interested in interning at some of the banks in Chicago. At the time, I was a finance major, and I was, you know, I was left at square one. I didn't really know what to do. So I went to the bank I wanted to apply to on LinkedIn, saw that you can sort by alumni, and found out that there's dozens of people from DePaul that work there. Added them all and started messaging about like, hey, like, what can I do? So it may start as like a cold open to a, right, the NASA network is great. It may start as a cold open to a company, but the more you could always gain more information by looking at the list of people who work there. Thankfully, a lot of our alumni are really great people who want to help and mentor students that are going through what they did in the past. So I would advise that. You could always just go on LinkedIn and it'll give you, if you have DePaul in your LinkedIn profile, it'll show you like, oh, 24 people from DePaul work here. Go through that list, add them. Don't be afraid to like start a conversation with them.
Some great advice. Thank you. And a lot of people. Did I freeze up on? Can you hear me? Thank you. Sorry about that. So the question was, how did you prepare for the application process?
I think for me, it was just a matter of getting my resume and everything together. For my specific internship, I had to, like they asked me certain questions, so I had to come up with answers to the questions that they had. It was part of the application process. And I think it was brought up earlier by Joshua that other people can really help you in like any of those departments. So I had like my mentor at the time look over the questions that I sent in, look over my resume, because they can always catch things that you might not see. So that was really helpful. And then once I got my initial interview, I reached out to a friend of a friend of a friend, who I knew worked at the company. And I asked her about her interview process there, since I knew it was several interviews before you got the internship or the job. And so I had some one-on-one conversations with her once I was getting further along in the interview process, which was really helpful. So and she's an alumni of DePaul, so I would definitely recommend looking at people who had been in the same hiring process as you.
Through my experience interviewing and applying at Center Focused Therapy, I made sure I had like a strong cover letter, and then during the interview, which wasn't too extensive, luckily, I just made sure to synthesize between what was on my resume, what was in my cover letter, and then kind of build off of it with whatever questions they gave additionally. But yeah, it was overall a really easy interview process, luckily for me. So yeah.
Yeah, in terms of preparing to apply, I think the first step is organization. So whenever I'm preparing for a season of applications, I go through and like just start an Excel document with like all the links to all the pages for the application, due dates, people you need to contact, in terms of the process, stuff like that, and everything's organized. Past that, once you've had everything gathered, such as your resume, cover letter, whatever you need, letters of reference, stuff like that, and you go on to the interview stage, I say that it's a lot easier said than done, but calming those nerves really helps. Having a genuine conversation with someone is always tough when you really want that job. But also what I like to think about is all the stuff that I couldn't put on my resume, right? Because your resume only says so much about you. But there's gaps between each of those events. So in the back of my head, as I'm, for instance, waiting in the waiting room for a Zoom call, I'll be thinking about, well, what's on my resume? What can I add to that when they ask me about that stuff? And yeah, in the past, like for the Adler, I also tried looking up I knew who was going to interview me. So I looked up what they were doing, what their research was like, some of their past positions. It didn't really end up coming up in the call, but it always helps to amass as much information as you can in that situation. But yeah, organization honestly is the crux of every application process. The more organized you are, the less stressful it is, and honestly, the better your application comes out.
Thank you. And to shift gears a little to your individual internships, what do your day-to-day responsibilities look like?
So for my internship, I was on a team, and there was like one team and one client throughout the entirety of my internship. And I got really lucky. I know that a lot of other interns across the board will maybe just like take notes or shadow more. But my manager really wanted to give me a hands-on experience. So he gave me like a 3-month project of like redesigning the client's budgeting tools and like creating a whole new system for them, which was really valuable because then at the end of the internship, I was able to present that to the client, and I'm pretty sure they use that budgeting tool now, or at least I hope so. But yeah, I had kind of like a specific task that I was working towards. And then, if my manager ever needed something like, hey, can you help me fix a PowerPoint together? Like I would obviously help with whatever immediate task was necessary.
At my previous internship, I was a research and referral intern, so that consisted of looking at different health centers in the areas around Colorado, New Mexico, and Nevada. So for example, like even things like dental, urology, adoption, stuff like that, we'd call these centers and we would make sure on behalf of Planned Parenthood that they were using like gender inclusive training. They didn't have any anti-choice rhetoric in the offices, stuff like that. And then I kind of compiled it into data, and then we got to use that with patients. And then at my current internship, it's social media heavy. So I'm running their Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook right now. And then we also do like office retreats. So I helped plan an office retreat at like a spray painting studio. So fun stuff like that. Because I don't have a master's or any higher educated degrees, I can't do any like direct therapy work, which sucks a little bit, but obviously I still get to kind of shadow and talk to all the therapists and like gain all their insight and help with what I'm gonna do for myself. And then aside from that, yeah, it's admin work. I help with like a bulletin board in the office sometimes for fun. So while it's not like directly what I want to do, it does give me like a foot into the field, as well as just help me gain more skills like the social media and stuff like that.
So I'll generalize my experience at the Adler and my current research position because they're largely the same in terms of what I do. So at the Adler, it would be basically I'd be given a project at the start of the internship, and that's the project everyone else is working on, but a specific portion of it, and in this case, it was the programming side of it. I'd have week intervals where I would just program and meet with project managers and discuss the project with them. So it'd be largely collaborative. We'd work on code every other day, meet on Zoom. We actually use Google Hangouts, but yeah, meet on Zoom. And then on the weekend, we'd go to the Adler and meet with the whole team and have a sort of roundtable discussion about where the project is going. It was a lot of fun, especially getting into the parts of the Adler where not everyone is like, allowed to go. But aside from that, it was also putting together presentations like PowerPoints every week, writing sections of papers. So it was a really diverse experience in terms of what I did. And it was a lot of collaboration, which is really great. Had I needed to do all that by myself, I don't think I would have gotten as far. But yeah.
Thank you. And another question in the chat, when do you suggest is the best time to apply for internships?
I think that this kind of depends on the industry. I can at least speak for consulting because there's, healthcare consulting, I'm in higher ed consulting, it's all the same timeline. I got my internship this summer before I interned. So I secured it in August, or maybe it was September, but the interview process was like July through August. And then the following June, I was an intern. But I also, like, for some of my unpaid internships, I would get it and then start the week later. So if you are looking for certain industries, I would just like look at industry trends and like look at LinkedIn and talk to your professors who might have knowledge in the industry, so that you're prepared for those timelines.
In my experience, I found the best time to apply for internships is just when it worked with my schedule. So I didn't really consider industry trends because I was also jumping from like healthcare to therapy. But whenever it works best for you. And then as soon as you see hiring, I know it's really popular for people to do them in the summer though, like over the summer when you don't have to worry about classes. I never did that though, but I've heard a lot of people do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I live with I'm roommates with a finance major who sticks to a certain schedule in terms of internship applications. So as Autumn said, it really depends on what industry you're working with. I can talk about in terms of research positions, it's pretty much year round, but there is a main season for applications starting from December and running from February, in which you're applying to summer positions, which are called research experiences for undergraduates, REUs. And these positions are research positions where you go to another institution or your own institution. You go to another institution to conduct research with faculty there. And typically the best time to apply for those is a couple of days before they're due, primarily because you want to make your application stand out. So I would say start early in December for these research positions and finish early in February. That span of 2 months or so gives you a good window to prepare, and also find out what it is you want to do. So with that, everything has its season, but you want to know before that season comes what you're applying to. So spending some time before that window of whatever odd months the application season is, to look at what's out there and to pick what you want, is also an important thing to do. Because you don't want to go into the process and then spend the first half of a month trying to figure out what it is you want to actually do and amass all that information too.
Thank you. And before I turn it over to the audience, one final question. What is your biggest piece of advice for folks who will be starting new internships or applying to it for the first time?
So I think in terms of starting an internship, I would just keep in mind that an internship is primarily supposed to be an experience for you, especially if it's unpaid, right? Like you are supposed to be the one getting the most from it. You're supposed to be understanding if this is a career that you can see yourself in. And so really just making sure to ground yourself with that. If you start to realize that you don't like the internship that you have, then it's important to like be honest with yourself, be honest with your manager about the types of interests that you have, because it's really like a fundamental time to really understand what you like to do and what kind of future career you can see yourself having.
I would say that it's really important to be transparent during interviews and set boundaries, especially as Autumn was saying, when it's unpaid. So if you're not going to be getting compensated for your work, but you still want the experience, you don't want to be like taking advantage of it all with your time. So make sure they know what you want to get out of it. Like what I did is I said, if you need me to come somewhere in person, I need a month's notice at least, because I'm not going to be like running around at an internship I'm not being paid for. So just stuff like that. So I'd say be transparent with your boundaries, network while you're there. I would like at everybody you talk to on LinkedIn, be super nice. You want to be like a face they remember in the future if you ever cross paths again. So networking. And then lastly, I would say to get as many internships as you can while you're undergrad without overwhelming yourself, of course, but being able to kind of see different fields, it's so beneficial to when you have to decide like what your career is actually going to be. So in many different fields, as much as you can relate it back to what your end goal is, I would try to like get a foot in.
Yeah, in my experience, starting an internship is really hard. Primarily because you're thrown into this position that you're doing for the first time, and it's really easy and inevitable that you'll make mistakes in what you're doing. And in the process of all that, it's really hard to start like thinking down on yourself, right? I remember when I got to the Adler, we were sitting in a meeting and everyone's talking and everyone's talking about ideas for the project. And I was like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like all these people are way smarter than I am. But you're in a new, I think what is important to understand is that you're in a new environment doing something new. So it's going to take time to acclimate. So I think that the most important thing when starting a new internship is to be excited and to hit the ground running, but also understand that there is a learning curve, one that you may not immediately see, but one that will become apparent, and just to ride that curve. At the end of the day, you're there to make mistakes, you're there to get an experience, and you're there to grow, and you can't do any of that without failing. And in terms of the most important things for applying for the first time, do not let those annoying rejection emails like have any give you the idea that somehow you're not in a good place to be applying for internships. Last time the research application season came around, so last summer, I applied to 12 sites, spent like a month and a half on applications, and I didn't get into any one of them. And I think it was really easy for me, especially when I got that first rejection letter, just be like, okay, like I'm clearly not doing something. I began to overthink. Maybe I'm not like being as serious as I should be with my physics stuff. But if that's not the case, I mean, there's so many people applying to these things, and in some component, the decision process it has some random component to it. So you can't take it to heart when you get those rejection emails. The only thing you can do is look for new opportunities and just keeping on. So yeah, in both cases, whether it's starting one or applying to one, failure is the biggest way to lose momentum. And I would say that the best advice is to not let that be the case. Just keep going. If you want it, then go and get it.
Thank you. That was all fantastic advice. And now I'm gonna turn it over to the audience for any questions. So again, feel free to drop any questions in the chat or unmute yourselves. Well, I have a question. Something that Cameron mentioned about boundaries. How do you suggest you set boundaries at your place of work? I think a lot of people struggle with that and feel a little uncomfortable doing that. So any advice on setting boundaries?
The best advice I can give for that is to be transparent about like what you're willing to do from the start. If you make a bunch of false promises thinking like it'll help you get the job, that can hurt you in the long run, and they can kind of count on you for a lot more than you were hoping. So just setting boundaries, if depending on how strict you are with them, it can turn away potential opportunities. But like you don't want to be in a position where like it's like in the movies where like they really just like have the intern doing legit everything. Like I would never do a coffee run because I'm not like there to do a coffee run. I'm there to like learn. So you just have to be like very transparent in the beginning. I feel like that's super unrealistic too, that it would be like a really bad situation, but you never know. So just like being really upfront about what you're willing to do from the start and like what you're hoping to get out of your time, because it is something set up for you as an intern. It will hopefully play out where you don't even need to continue to set boundaries because they'll respect you in your position.
Yeah, I think that I'm honestly still struggling with that. It's tough, right? Because you're put into a position where, you've got this opportunity and you really want to show that you're there and that you're, able to just, provide proof that you're the one that's supposed to be there. So it's hard to set boundaries and also try to maximize what you want to do while you're at your internship. And in my experience, making making promises you can't keep does hurt. Not only hurts the project that you're working on, but it also hurts you, because when you can't meet those, you end up feeling like you kind of failed a bit. So I think, especially if your internship is during the school year, like during a quarter, understanding that you're also a student and that things take time, it's not incredibly detrimental to your progress in the future if you're honest with what you can do in say a week's time. Really, if you pull off these lengthy expectations of yourself, people will honestly be surprised, because everyone else seems to be in a realistic perspective where they know what can be done in a week. So I would say that it's a process so far of trying and failing and seeing what your capabilities are, especially during the school year. So find your boundaries first, and then setting them is a different kind of thing. Understand what exactly you can get done given your schedule.
Thank you. That was all great advice that I definitely need to. Yeah.
If I may pose a question, what's one thing that looking back you would do differently with either the application process of getting an internship or at an actual internship?
I think my biggest one, going off of your comment about failure, I think a huge problem that I had is I had these like wide variety of interests. I was comparing my personal timeline with like the timeline of my friends. And so I was just submitting a general resume to everywhere. And I was getting so frustrated that I wasn't getting like bites. And of course I wasn't, because it wasn't really catered to any specific industry. It was very general. I didn't like match keywords from the job description to my resume. And so I think as soon as someone gave me the advice of like slowing down and like really reflecting on what my actual interests are and like what specific type of internship I really wanted, then that completely changed like how many interviews I was getting. It's more time consuming, of course, but also if you're just blank applying to like 30 internships versus submitting a really quality resume to like 5 or 10, it's going to make a really big difference. And I think if I didn't hear that piece of advice at the time I did, I think there's no way I would have gotten the internship that I ended up getting, because I really catered it directly to the role.
In my experience, once I had gotten my internship credit for DePaul, I kept looking for some, but in my head, I was so stuck on like making sure I was accommodated appropriately for what I thought I had to offer, which is great. But I got a really awesome internship opportunity, and it was paid, but it was paid less than I thought I should have been getting, because I had a job that was paying the same amount. It wasn't an internship job at all, but I wanted to match it so badly, like the price per hour. So I had like a lot of friends being like, they should pay you more, they make this much money. So I had like a lot like, yeah, you're right, like this company makes so much money, they should be paying me more. So I denied it, and in retrospect I regret that, because the experience would have been so great. And it was an internship. Like I had my head wrapped around like my time being worth so much. It was like last year, so maybe I was just like in a phase, but I definitely regret denying that internship, because I wished I had the experiences that I didn't get from it.
I think that in my experience, there's one thing that I regret in terms of while I was at an internship, and that's not speaking up during meetings. If you're an intern, there's this weird, at least I gave myself the perception that anything that I'm going to say in terms of contribution is not at all valid, and is flawed, and everyone around me is clearly got a better grasp of things than I do. That's not the case. A lot of the times, you're also you're fresh into your education. So if there's anyone with the most up-to-date knowledge, it's you. So in terms of being in an internship, I think speaking your opinions on certain things is very valid. Of course, be respectful, but in terms of like contributing to a project, don't hold back your ideas, right? It could be, the next thing that brings the project forward. And in terms of application processes, the one thing I regret is sitting there and pondering if I should apply to something, if I should do that, primarily because I think I wouldn't have gotten in. So for example, there was this research position last summer at Caltech, which is a great school for physics. And I sat there and I was like, well, I don't think I should apply because obviously I'm not getting in. You never know. So apply. I mean, you'll only know if you can go if you find out that you got in or not. Or it's like, I can apply to this thing, but I don't know if it'll work out in the future. Well, let your future self make that decision, right? When you get that acceptance letter, you can always deny it. So just apply and make that decision later on. It doesn't hurt to apply.
If there are any other questions, I think that's a great note to end on. Again, thank you so much to all of our panelists for taking the time to speak with us today, and I'll turn it over to Megan.
I'm actually going to have Jocelyn share our wonderful internship opportunity handout that she developed. So Jocelyn, you can take it away.
Yeah. So hello everyone. Thank you again for taking your time. So I just inputted in the chat a document that I created for you guys of internship opportunities available to you. The majority of them are via Handshake, like Autumn said earlier that she did apply through Handshake. So the internal internship opportunities are there. And then I did some just external internship opportunities that again all should be linked back to Handshake.
Thank you again for all attending. I'm actually going to launch a poll at this point. If you all could spend just a couple seconds. It's really, your feedback is very valuable to do future events. So thank you to our panelists for participating. Thank you all for attending. And if you have any other questions for our panelists or for our Career Center staff, definitely stay after. And we're happy to answer anything, but thank you all so much for attending.